I'd like to call our July 12th Committee of the Whole meeting to order, and I'm going to pass it off to the mayor. Do you want to do it now? Or?
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Mayor Chouinard, and I'm going to pass things over to Councillor Bennett.
Okay, thank you very much. Oh, yeah, this year I attended the Trans-Canada Highway Association meeting on the 8th here, and Councillor Chouinard received an award, and it's a Teach-On Award. It's presented to people who have received the Builder of the Yellowhead Award and continue to support the association. It is usually presented to people who have made special contributions as director of committee members or in their work towards achievement of objectives of the Yellowhead Highway Association. Having called Edson, Alberta home for the past 40 years, Councillor Chouinard has been active and supportive member and representative from the town of Edson for many years. Since his election to town council in 2010, Gene has continually provided and valued input into our resolution process, has been a strong advocate of the highway. His commitment to supporting the association was clearly shown by ensuring the town of Edson remained active in the association. Gene's hard work was recognized previously with the addition of his name to the trophy of the Yellowhead Highway Builders. Gene then took on the role of Alberta Caucus Chair for the association, and has been working diligently to contact with Alberta municipalities, both current members and those who have stepped down. Please join me in congratulating Gene Chouinard.
Now you have to get the roll page through town.
Actually, I'm working on that. Okay, now that we had this interruption, but this is very nice. Thank you for attending. I was busy, so I could not attend, so thank you for attending on my behalf.
More than welcome.
Okay, so I'm going to call for the adoption of the agenda. Do we have any additions? No. I think so. Councillor Byers. Okay, all those in favor? Or opposed?
Just making sure you can read it.
Oh, okay. Well, I was going to say the mayor, but I couldn't read this. Okay, now moving on here, agenda. Okay, adoption of previous minutes from June 14th, 2022, Committee of the Whole. Everyone's read and attended that. Okay, thank you, Councillor Blasichny. All those in favor? Those opposed? Thank you. Okay, there's no executive office infrastructure, corporate services draft policy FB3 presented by Sarah Bittner, General Manager, Corporate Services.
Mr. Chair. Just bring up my presentation. So this evening, presenting to you a draft reserve policy that had been prepared by administration. I just start with purpose of reserves, just a quick rundown. What I've done here is picked out, I know there was a lot of reading in the briefing note as well as the policy itself. So I've tried to pick out the important parts this evening to show you through the presentation. So obviously to set aside funds for specific purposes, provide for emergent needs. They can stabilise tax rates if needed, replace existing equipment and facilities, fund your future projects, and through long-term planning, they can help minimise debt financing as well. So in August last year, we did present to the strategic planning session back then, sort of the first look at a reserve policy. And from that discussion, have come back and looked to enhance it and bring it forward to you, which you're seeing tonight. So we looked for lots of best practices, and we found that quite difficult. There was nothing really suggested or mandated from municipalities. There's no one-size-fits-all approach, as these policies really, while they can be similar in layout, the contents must reflect each municipality's distinct needs and circumstances. We did look at different policies from other municipalities, as well as attended a reserve webinar put on by a municipal consultant. The best practice really is to have a policy. That's sort of the first, that sort of first part of it was to have that policy. But as I say, as each municipality is unique, there could be different types of reserves, different optimal balances, different usages based on the needs of your particular municipality. And for example, Edson's policy proposes increasing those reserves while also reducing the volatile and unreliable revenue stream. So that's a unique concept included in our policy, for example. So within the policy, we have what we call the guiding principles on the reserves. Obviously, the first one, all reserve transactions should be approved by council prior to transaction occurring. So we would always need to come to council to use those reserves, to change them, etc. Within the guiding principles, we also wanted to make sure that we weren't tying council's hands. So some of this wording is very important, that the reserves will always be looked at the budget level. So making sure that the wording that we have in this is flexible for council. So year-end operational surpluses should first replenish operating reserves to their optimal balance where applicable, and then capital. Again, that's a should. It would be at council's discretion how any of those would be used. The next part here also, each annual budget shall include a recommended 0.5% taxation increase, which simultaneously decreases one of those revenue streams that we've talked about. Again, recommended, so you'll see that come forward in a budget cycle, but again, it's the flexibility of council to decide whether that goes ahead within that budget cycle or does not. Obviously, the guiding principles that we will have reserve listings and they were attached to the policy. An optimal balance will be is recommended where applicable to ensure that that reserve can serve its intended purpose. Any strategies to maintain the balances will be addressed by corporate services and the relevant department. And corporate services will present to council the balance of the reserves during budget deliberations. So the reserve balances are different than the reserve policy. It's just where our reserves actually are at any given time. So with our reserve listings, all the current reserves we had are reflected in the policy presented to you. And each reserve listing will obviously have their name and their category, their general purpose, specific purpose, stabilisation and contingency, and infrastructure, lifestyle, maintenance and replacement reserve, as a restricted reserve or a developer or sub-area reserve. And those definitions are included within the policy. The type of reserve, whether it's operating or capital, the description and purpose for the reserve, and also the source of funding. So where would this reserve be funded from? It could include places where they're currently funded from or places they could be funded from. Optimal balance if required, and also the duration of that reserve, whether it's ongoing or whether it's a shorter duration. So talking about the optimal balances, this is where we've spent the most time, I think, with preparing this policy, trying to think about optimal balances. But each reserve is unique, and so one formula didn't fit all. We looked at things like, for example, 5% of operational expenses for each operating reserve, but some areas require more than that, some areas require less, just based on the area that reserve is for. So for optimal balances, we derive them looking at a number of different ways. In 2018, we did have a surplus from 2017, and we brought that back, and council approved incorporated them into our operational reserves to get up to certain balances. So where applicable, those balances were incorporated into this policy as those optimal balances. So it goes as a starting point for those particular reserves. There are different areas where the varying needs and varying amounts can come in. And for example, the snow removal reserve was one. You'll see that the optimal balance states it'll be equal to 1 year's annual snow budget. Not the whole annual budget, I just noticed that, sorry. Annual snow budget. Therefore, that balance can shift as the needs and expenses change within snow removal. And others, we may have optimal balances that we've set due to like a best forecast of the amount needed for that particular reserve. Some we'll see have a not applicable balance. These are the ones we looked at and thought, like, say, for example, due to the infrastructure deficit, many of the capital ones will have theirs set at not applicable. For example, our infrastructure reserve We didn't see why we would put a cap on that when there's infrastructure to be done. So, and also not applicable, used for reserves that have shorter known durations, for example, the COVID reserve. Once that's gone, it's gone. There's no real optimal balance on that. It's of a short duration. That's just a quick rundown of how we came up with some of those optimal balances in the policy. So moving on to this other aspect, the unique aspect of our policy is the philosophy of increasing our reserve contributions while also reducing that reliance on some of those revenues that we've classed as volatile or unreliable, because these revenues are actually offsetting taxation right now. And if something may happen to one of those, there could be an immediate impact on taxation to keep the current service levels up. So they're the ones we're trying to shift out of general taxation and move into reserves. So the 5 that we have listed in Appendix B of the policy are the fines revenue. This is one where the province can make changes at their discretion. They did that in April 2020 and decided to keep quite a bit more of the revenue for themselves rather than giving it to us. So that did have an impact on our budget. So that could happen at any time. The medical centre rent, we do have a lease that expires in 2025, so that's coming up. The ATCO gas franchise, while it is a more stable stream, our franchise fee policy does state that the allocation of franchise fees should really move towards reserves. So that's just being in line with our franchise fee policy. The doctor's house rent, the lease can be terminated with a month's notice. That's not a high ticket item, but it is one that at the moment is offsetting taxation. And the last one is one that is not impacted by any external factors. It's our utility operations for water. At the moment, it generates an operational surplus, which offsets taxation. So over time, that should also be maybe moving to reserves to fund some of our capital water issues. As I say, that one is on the bottom of the list because that is not impacted by external factors. That's entirely within our own control. So just an overview of that. So the amount of those streams are currently offsetting taxation for this year for $1.9 million. So using the 0.5 based on this year's 0.5 would give us 57,000. It would take us 33 years to clear all of those 5 different revenue streams. So that's just a little bit of an eye-opener there, but that's, if we start now, we're going to start down that path. So we're not relying on those volatile revenues so much. So within the policy, obviously it's presented for council's review and questions, but there were 4 items that administration was looking for some feedback this evening. On page 3 of the policy, there was the review frequency. So administration proposes the policy itself be reviewed at a minimum of once every 4 years, which is once per council term. So this isn't the reserve balances, which we will bring to you periodically as needed. This is the policy itself. So that was the first item that I'd like some feedback on. Should I do one by one or read the whole lot out first, right?
What does most people
Probably
feel
one by one.
comfortable? Yeah, you might carry on.
You want me to do all?
Or does council have any questions up there, or whatever works better? Councillor Bevan.
Through the chair of administration, when you said once every 4 years as per council term, would that be at the beginning or at the end of it? Because if you're doing it at the end, you got a new council coming in, you know, they don't understand it, or you're going to do it different so that council comes in, knows what it's all about.
Through the chair to Councillor Bevan, if this policy were to be passed very soon, when it's brought back to council, it will be 4 years from this date. So it will be at this time for the term.
Okay.
Right.
Is there any other questions? Okay, then let's carry on.
So on page 23, I have highlighted those titles of those reserves in yellow for scrolling purposes. On page 23, we have the Economic Development Reserve. And within that one, for the sources of funding, administration proposes a percentage of business license revenue be set aside for economic development purposes to help fund their economic development area. The proposed preferred funding for that would be an increase in the business license fees to cover this transfer. If it wasn't an increase in fees and wanted that amount to go to the reserve, that would then be an increase in your general taxation. So that would just say proposed funding for that particular reserve. It doesn't mean it happens now or immediately. It's just as far as the policy goes, it could be a proposed funding for the economic development reserve.
Cool. Councillor Beyer.
Thanks. Through the chair to Ms. Bittner. So you have on there proposed like a 5% is something that you put down already. What kind of dollar amount does that roughly work out to be right now, just ballpark?
Let me see. 5% would be around between 2,500 and 3,000.
Okay.
Somewhere in there, yes, around 3,000.
So it's not super significant.
Councillor Beyer.
Thanks. Through the chair to Ms. Bittner. So this economic development reserve, is this the one that we're currently using for the beautification grants as well, or like what do we have in there?
Through the chair to Councillor Beyer. The beautification grants have been incorporated into that reserve, I believe, but I would have to check that for you. I'm not 100% certain.
Carry on.
Okay, so that's right, that's good, thank you. On page 25, we do have a small reserve for the Eddies 4 Classic. We did have a tournament pre-COVID. It has a very small balance of $1,490. Administration recommends absorbing this into another recreation reserve. So for council's feedback on that.
Just a comment, you got double numbers. Page 25 and 15 on the agenda, if you're going through it. Like if you look on the agenda,
this is
you
the
got
policy
page
number, sorry,
right,
not
so I'm
the
just looking,
agenda
I'm
page
going,
number.
it doesn't make any sense, so
My
just
apologies
pointing
for
out
that.
this small one.
Very sorry.
No, that's all right, I figured it out when you said yellow highlights. Mr. Mayor.
So Ms. Bittner, you're suggesting that we go into just the recreation operational reserve? Sounds good to me.
So a very small amount like that, it didn't really seem necessary to continue with that one, so yeah. The last one on page 41 of the policy is one we call development levies for West Grove. This is one that many who have been on council may have noticed has been there for a long time, around $152,000. After some investigating, it was found to come from some development levies when West Grove was developed. As West Grove is now fully developed, administration recommends reallocating these funds to a new stormwater management reserve. We have sort of a generic infrastructure reserve, and we felt it might be prudent to actually create a stormwater management reserve.
Councillor Beyer.
Thanks. Through the chair to Ms. Bittner. On this West Grove Reserve, is this the one where it's expiring? So I know some people that live in West Grove, and I used to live in an area that had a levy on it, and I believe it expired. It was for the paving or something of it. I don't recall the details at that time. So was this currently going towards the debenture? And then my next question is it expiring for people soon?
Through the chair to Councillor Beyer. Some of those questions I don't have answers for. This reserve has actually been here the entire time I have been here and has not changed. We did a little bit digging backwards to find out that it did come from when West Grove was developed for any off-site things that may have needed to be done there. There was a well at a part of West Grove there that was to be reclaimed. That has already been completed. And so this is now the remaining amounts from those levies that were collected at that time.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor.
I think it's a good idea to have a stormwater management reserve. What is our stormwater management levy on our utility bills? Is that just going to infrastructure right now, or is that money going towards?
At the moment, it's the moment I believe it is just going towards general taxation. We removed it from taxation and put it on the utility bills. So it's still going towards offsetting that revenue offsets taxation at the moment. It's not being transferred out. Once again, I will double check that, but that is my understanding of the stormwater amount that was coming.
I think the revenue generated from that should be going into this reserve and not offsetting taxation.
Sorry.
I think the revenue being generated from that levy should be going into this reserve because that was the intended purpose.
Mm-hmm. I will double check that for you. Mr. Mayor.
Anyone else? Okay, carry on, please. You can carry on.
Right, thank you very much. That's the end of my presentation for the reserve policy. So thank you for your feedback, and I will take these into consideration and bring the policy back to council at a later date.
Okay. Councillor Wire, then one more question.
Sorry, yes, I have some more questions.
Oh, sorry,
That weren't
yes.
related to the 4 items
Yeah,
that you
sorry,
listed.
sorry.
No, that's fine. So I recall you, sorry, through the chair, Jim Spinner. I recall you mentioning, a while ago that it was challenging to figure out what the best number was to put on the reserve, and I can certainly appreciate that. It's very challenging. And I was trying to think of that when I was reading through this, right? How do you pick, right? And I kept wondering with a couple of them that were related to the asset management plan. So for optimal balance, so I'm just on the public works page right now, which is page 32 in the on the computer here. And it says the optimal balance is, $1 million, right? And I was like, oh, I wonder what the asset management plan says that we're supposed to be contributing annually, right? And it says, I think it was 3, which is probably not the best example, sorry. 311,000 is the annual contribution to kind of be sustainable based on the 2018 asset management plan. And I was wondering if it would be helpful for council to kind of just have that information on those that apply to it, because not every reserve applies to the asset management plan, but there's a few that are directly related to it. And if just knowing what those annual amounts were supposed to be, then it kind of gives us some guidance of, where we're at, because when you have 3 million in a reserve, but you don't, like $3 million is a lot of money, but when you're supposed to be contributing, $2 million a year, all of a sudden, okay, that's maybe not as much as we thought, right? And I don't know, just something to kind of remind us constantly about where we need to be with that asset management plan. And I know it's not going to happen overnight, but that was just my only feedback. Otherwise, I thought this was really, really great, and certainly appreciate all the effort that you guys have put into it, because it's something that we've kind of talked about for a while, and every time budget comes up, we don't really know what's a good amount to have in these reserves. So I certainly appreciate everything you guys have done. Thank you.
So sorry, I guess I should ask if any other questions before.
Does anyone else have any questions for Ms. Bittner? Okay, then you have enough information from us. Okay, thank you
very much.
Thank you.
Okay, now E4, Community Protective Services, FCSS Program Oversight Governance Framework, presented by Tanya Byer, Senior Manager, Community Services.
Was on a roll. Good evening, everyone. I'm just here to speak about the FCSS program, the Oversight and Governance Framework. You've received a lot of information in the package already, and I just put a really short slideshow here together just to give you a little bit of an overview of FCSS. There are some counselors, I guess, since I've been in front of you before, and we have gone through a couple different governance structures over the past 4 years, and we're still just really wanting to explore, I guess, what the new council would like to do in terms of FCSS governance. So the Edson FCSS administration model, our portfolio is part of a larger community services department that provides preventative, social, recreational, and cultural programming. Some of you may remember when we switched to the community development model that brought it all under the one umbrella. A big reason for this is because we had recreation on one island, culture on another island, and then two FCSS staff doing something different. And we just really found that through community development, we could work together and be far more efficient and effective and provide better service to the community, which I think we have definitely done through that model. And so the staff right now, so essentially we have two staff coordinators that are funded by FCSS, and then two that are funded through the community development budget. And I am the supervisor of the 4 coordinators at this time. So the funding sources for FCSS are the province of Alberta, Town of Edson, and Yellowhead County. With the FCSS funding model, the province expects that each municipality that participates provides minimum 20% to their 80% contribution. And currently the province, which has been the same since I've been here for 6 years, is just over 200,000 is what they provide to us. And that is how the funding model works. And each year it's a 3-year contract that we get into with them now, which is nice. It was 1 year for several years, and now we're just into our 3rd year of the 3-year funding agreement. So municipal FCSS program delivery. So in Alberta, preventative social services are provided in the different communities by, you can either do a direct service delivery, so meaning the town staff basically provides all of the programming, or you can also do it through external grants. Many of you probably remember when we would give $30,000 to the Boys and Girls Club, for example. That was an FCSS grant. So we really do a combination of methods. So we just feel that it has worked best, that the town we feel like we can provide the best service, I guess, with our town staff delivering, and just with the infrastructure that we do have at the town, it's been proven to work really well. But we do keep 22,000 for external grants so that we can, basically support other nonprofits and whatnot in our community that are providing services that would either duplicate ours or, they're just enhancing the things that we can do in our community and providing different services than we do. And so the current role of council, right now, you are the direct governing body for FCSS in Edson. As you know, we don't have an external board. And so essentially it is your role to determine whether to participate in the FCSS program, which we do. You enter the funding agreement with the province and is accountable to the province for local FCSS program operations. In this case, entering those funding agreements is delegated to CEO Beveridge. She signs those agreements. You approve the annual budget through the FCSS program, and any changes that we make to the budget throughout the year, that always comes through council for decisions. You set strategic priorities and provide recommendations for consideration to administration. And you also rely on us for communication and recommendations for programming and budgeting and whatnot. So there are options. The reason that we're bringing these options to is because we feel that we've been, we tried out the committee where council was meeting separately as the advisory committee. There were some benefits and there were some drawbacks, one of them being somewhat redundant in that we would meet outside of here and then we would have to bring it to the committee meeting and then we would still have to bring it to council. So there was some redundancy there. So there's basically a few options that Mr. Beck and I have been discussing, and we just really want to open it to discussion with you, council. So we can continue with the current model where administration provides council with FCSS updates as required during council and committee meetings only. And we just strictly engage Yellowhead County administratively twice a year as per our cost share agreement with them. Option 2, we can establish a town FCSS board that consists of town residents and the town of Edson councillors. engage Yellowhead County administration, the same as we are right now, twice per year as per the agreement. And then the third option would be to establish the joint town and county FCSS board. That would include town council, town residents, county council, and county residents. In Mr. Beck and my opinion, we think that there's some real merit to going down this road and including our funding partners in, just guidance, I guess, of FCSS delivery. Over the years that I've been here, over 6 years, it seems pretty standard that we have about 35 to 40% of participants that engage in our programming are county residents. So it is significant that, their voice be heard and that they be engaged. And so that is, I guess, the question that we have before you is that, we would just like to open discussion, and there really doesn't seem to be, like, throughout our region, and we meet on a fairly regular basis and talk with our counterparts. There's no right or wrong, there's no best, there doesn't seem to be a gold standard or which one works better. It's really just depends what works for your municipality. And it's all over the map. Yellowhead County, they had gotten rid of their FCSS board, but then last year they put it back in place. Hinton is governed by their council directly. Fox Creek gets direct with council. Whitebird has a board. So like I say, there's really no consistency, and it's just really a local decision. So I would like to open the floor to questions.
Councilor Moore. Through the chair to Ms. Myers. What do you see for current demographics and future demographics regarding the services for the next few years in the town and the county?
Through the chair to Councilor Moore, are you wondering if we expect it to increase or age, or I'm sorry, I don't quite understand the question.
Well, for example, perhaps younger children, if you can see an increase in that, and people wanting maybe expand the services in some areas.
Through the chair to Councilor Moore, the only thing that I guess one trend that I think we can expect is the population is somewhat aging, right? We are definitely seeing that come. I think the services for seniors is something that we're going to continue focusing on, and we're one of the few organizations that do put specific emphasis there in terms of the preventative social programming, not so much health and whatnot, obviously, but that's definitely an area that we would focus on. In terms of the early childhood programming, the Edson Friendship Center and also the LEAP organization has really put new focus on the early childhood and really filled the gap, I guess, that we experienced when we lost parent programming. So that is one nice thing, I guess, about FCSS is that we are able to shift and move and identify the needs and really put our services where they're most needed. So that may not answer your question directly. I don't 100% have the answer to that.
Councilor Brzezinski.
Yeah, through the chair to administration. I have two questions. 80-20 funding, is that 80% town and 20% provincial, or vice versa? And the second part of my question is on your third recommendation that the recommended option, you're saying there's a financial implication, and I'd like to know what those financial implications are.
So through the chair to Councilor Brzezinski, it's 80% is the province and 20% is the town obligation. So we are obligated to put around 70,000 towards it when they're giving us like 220 or something, maybe we're 60. Yeah, sorry, it's around 60.
That's not 80-20. So we're putting in more than the 20%.
No, we're putting in just right around the 20%.
So we're about 300 province then. If we're going 80-20. So if we're 70,000 and times that by 4, so you're right, the province is about 280,000. Would be our 70. That'd be an 80-20 split.
The way that it's calculated, it's a little bit hard to explain, and it's not going to come to me while I'm sitting here. But it is 80-20, but it ends up being the way that you calculated. I don't know if you can help me with this one, Paul.
No, it's 80-20. That's,
Yeah, it is, and when you do the math.
if Sarah's got access to the spreadsheet, we could probably pull that up. I don't think we exceed 20, do we here?
No, we don't. We're
Some
usually right
communities
on the
decide
line.
to exceed 20. This is not a community that decides to exceed 20. So we're at 20.
He answered my question, but I still haven't got the second question answered. Based on your statement here, it says if we do item 3, as mentioned above, developing a new board will also have financial implications. What financial implications are those to developing a board? Are we paying board members for the public, or is it travel? Is it expenses? What would be the cost for having expenses?
So through the chair to council positioning, that is some parameters I think that would have to be established. The county, for example, they do pay them for the meetings that they attend. But again, that is up to this council, I guess, as to how they want to do that. They're obviously having meetings, it could have costs attached to it, whether, meals be brought in or renting space if we don't have available. But the other expense, probably the biggest expense that would come is it's customary for board members to attend the FCSS conference every year. And that comes at quite a cost, but I mean, you can decide that maybe 2 people from that board are going to be funded through the town and attend. If county councilors, let's say we're sitting on here, they may be already going as part of the FCSS county, right? So it is just really, I think, up to council how you want to set that budget. But it's not included in here right now.
That answers your question. Councillor Bevan.
Through the chair of administration. I did sit on the community service board, the FCSS and FCSS AA for probably about 9 years through the town. And it did come at a cost. And we got to go to all the FCSS conferences and everything else. And they picked up the rooms, the whole works and that. So I think we had 8 or 9 members on there, and we had 1 counselor. And it actually worked out really good for a fair while. Then the board kind of got shanghaied with some people, and that's when we decided to make a change. It went kind of south fairly fast. But I know I was sitting on that board, and I sat on with some counselors before I got on this council here. And it was good. I enjoyed it. We got to talk to county, we got to talk to Hinton, Whitecourt, all around the area, what was going on. We went to the conferences, met with a lot of ministers about what was going on with the great tsunami that was coming in. They're still saying it's coming, but it's already coming past sort of deal starting again. But then the 80-20 has always been there. And they've always fought, as long as I can remember, of getting more. And they always promised more, and nothing ever came about it. So I can see the board being a good idea, and maybe number 3 option might be even a better idea. So I see both sides of the set on both sides for change. So it's, yeah, thanks for the presentation. I got to think of that one.
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you for your presentation, Tanya. As stated in your request for decision, part of the responsibilities for municipalities are to engage citizens in the planning, delivery, evaluation, and governance of programs. And I think that's something that has been missing for some time now, is to have that public input and that public involvement as we talk about FCSS. This is a little different than what we had before with the Community Services Board, as this is focused directly on just FCSS. And I think it really is important that the county has a say, as they are a major funder of FCSS programming within the town of Edson, as we provide that programming for county residents. And I know that in previous joint council meetings that there has been a desire from council, from the other county council at the time, to have that kind of input and be able to sit at the table. But unfortunately, the way we were set up before, that just wasn't a possibility. So the cost, there's always a cost to everything that we do. But if we are hitting the outcomes that we need to hit for our community, I think it's well worth the effort. And I think it's well worth to have that public engagement, because they are able to go back out into the community and share the information of the programming that we have and the opportunities that we have for families within Edson. So I certainly would be in support of number 3, ensuring that our county partners have a say and have some input into what we provide here within the town of Edson.
Councillor Byer.
Thanks, through the chair to council and administration. Thanks, Tammy, for the presentation. And I was thinking on this a lot, and I share what the mayor just mentioned. In my own words, I feel that we should have some residents on this board. I think that option 3 is, I think, ideal as well. If the county isn't interested in having like their council on it, I still think even having the residents available to apply to the board is important as well, because we know the political boundaries, but they don't feel that same way about the services and everything in our community. So I think having the county residents on there as well is important. And maybe, I know the library board is structured in a way where there's only so many county residents compared to town, right? Just based on those usage kind of numbers. And the way that we have had it structured the past couple of years, not being super familiar with everything and kind of learning it as we're going, as we've gone through this process, it has felt a little bit more as this is what we've done, but not necessarily where I'm expected to put input into it. I guess I'm not sure if I'm going to explain that right. So we've been informed on what's happening, but I don't feel that was maybe structured the best way to add additional input. And maybe I just missed the boat on that. I'm not sure. But I think having the residents on there is really important. So.
Through the chair of administration, what do we gain by having a board? And what's their sole purpose? Right? Like, are they saying policy? Are they like, what's the purpose of having another level of meeting? So what do we gain? Like I read here, it says public and large numbers of increased public engagement. The program, well, in the past it didn't really occur. The collaborative power, so we're giving a couple members of the community some more, chance to speak to it. But so you're going to have an FCS board meeting. What are they going to talk about at the meeting? Like, are they just getting together to talk about it? I just kind of want to have a good sense of, we're going to create a board, which is another place where someone from council has to go and sit and be a part of. Then as it come to here for final ratification, like what do we truly gain by adding another board? Because I was on council when we got rid of the board, and I can tell you the reasons why, and it was very simple decisions back then. But I'd like to know today what we're going to gain as a municipality. We're going to have some expenses incurred. All right, we're going to have, there's expenses to the municipality to have this board. And what are we going to gain to say, wow, that was worth the bang for the buck? Because there's nothing worse than having a meeting for the sake of having a meeting, right? Like, nobody likes going to a meeting that could have been a meeting. So what are we going to gain as a municipality from creating a new board, bringing this to people from the public? I'm sure we already meet with the county on a lot of our stuff, and we should have open door policy between the two communities. I just want to I kind of need to be sold on this because I'm not sold, and I'll be honest. That's just me. I can't speak for the rest of council. I kind of need to be sold on what we're going to gain as a municipality, what their true power is going to be, right? Like, do we hand stuff over to them and they now take care of it? Like, I kind of need to know what this board's going to do for us.
Through the chair to Councillor Position, I came here after the board was dissolved. So unfortunately, I haven't seen both, right? So I'm actually going to pass this over to Mr. Beck because he has worked under municipalities that have the boards that were quite functional. So if you would mind doing that.
Yeah, sure. It's pretty common in other municipalities. Not every municipality in Alberta has an FCSS board, but many do. They're really common. They are your gateway to residents that really have a passion for social issues in your community. They do provide strategic advice to programs. You need to do that. You have to prepare an annual business plan, or is it 3-year? They ask you for a 3-year outlook as well with the government of Alberta, but an annual business plan that would report back to council. A lot of times they are made up of residents that actually sit on other boards. So they bring a perspective that's helpful. A different agency that we partnered with, for example. A lot of times they're the groups that end up dealing with some of your bigger issues in town. And they can work on like bigger projects that council has. You have some initiatives in your strategic plan that would inform the board of maybe what is important to council. You've listed homelessness as a strategic priority to look at, housing. Another thing, I'll kind of go off of the question that Councillor Moore had earlier, was the question about where do you see demographics going? So typically an FCSS board, they would oversee a project that Tanya would work on, probably a needs assessment for the community. That's going to be driven by your demographics and reaching out to community groups. And they periodically, every 4 or 5 years, you do a full-blown needs assessment, Susie, handled by the FCSS board, and that informs the next few years of your program. And those recommendations come back to council. They don't get to decide them in isolation, but it's a recommendation back to council each year. There's pitching a business plan back to council with the budget, saying these are the things that we work with the FCSS manager on. We think this is where the community should be going on their programs.
Okay. Christine.
You did turn your name tag.
No, I'm reading it over here. I was trying to think of
CAO.
CAO beverage. That's what I meant to say.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Schumer. Just wanted to supplement, just with quite a bit of experience with boards and committees in other organizations. I think that as Mr. Beck mentioned, that perspective and unique of bringing different individuals from your community into the room to help administration, that's a piece of it too. There's sometimes you're bringing forward an idea or a program or something that is potentially a new initiative that you're actually vetting that through the board, and they are actually the ones that are actually able to take that and provide input. So it's not just administration deciding what you're doing for your particular program, but it's also your board. I've seen very active boards where they are very much driving the initiative and working. They actually help to work for the municipality in a sense where they're given almost a little task force where they're given something to go out and get some information. It's just it's another way to allow our community members to be a part of building our community. So in this particular example, I think that's probably more so than some of the other boards that we have that I've seen in place, but very much hands-on and also adjudication of grants and those types of things as well. It's done by a committee of people versus just one individual. So there's definitely pros and cons to all of the recommendations that were mentioned today, and status quo, it's not that it's broken, it's just a matter of wanting to make sure that we look at it and get the input that is possible. That's one of the things we look at, and we've got some fresh eyes and looking at how we can further engage our residents and make it maybe more valuable. It's or allow more buy-in for what we're presenting out to the community.
Okay, I'll comment. Option 1, if it's not broken, don't fix it, because I'm echoing what Councillor Persicny, because I was on council when we disbanded the board, because what CEO Beveridge is saying, you get good input, but sometimes they go sideways. So the advantage of option 1, and we're involving the county now that we can start meeting when we have council meetings, some of the ideas could be brought up during that time. So having the county and town together kind of echoes years ago when we were involving Hinton and Jasper and all that. And you get too many people involved and sometimes it doesn't work. So if you stuck with option 1, and is like Mr. Beck said, when we're doing homeless, could we do like an ad hoc group, like just choosing one topic that would work with FCSS instead of just having the public board members in? Because the problem I see with that, one member comes in and they want to address homelessness. Homelessness is very important, but it's not the only thing that drives it. So I'm looking at option 1, it's not broken, don't fix it. Councillor Byer.
Thanks, through the chair to council and administration. So my comments earlier, I guess, kind of come from this sentiment that Councillor Position was mentioning about, you know, what are we going to get out of it? And that's where I guess maybe explaining myself a little bit further is I think it is broken. I think it is broken a little bit. So maybe not broken so much that it, you know, we see it shattered on the floor, but so from my perspective, council has been given information, but I don't feel that we have been in a position where that is being brought back out to the community and that we're bringing this information. And what Mr. Beck mentioned about, you know, the different survey for the needs survey, right? Like we weren't doing that. And the comments that CO Beveridge mentioned as well, you know, that's so if we structure it to support that, I think that's where that benefit is from, because I don't want to have more meetings just to have meetings. And we have lots of boards that are very functional in town, and maybe if there's people that are undesirable to have on a board, that's why you have terms. That's the reason for that, is to constantly get fresh eyes, and I mean that in a great way, because that's important to have that diversity and to have new ideas constantly on boards. And I think we do have a lot of really passionate people in Edson that would be able to offer a lot of great advisory and services to an FCSS board, and that's why I like that option 3.
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, and further to through the chair, through to Councillor Byers' point, you know, we've had as a council FCSS meetings, and quite frankly, we're not the experts in this field at all. This is way outside of our wheelhouse for many things, and I feel like sitting in those meetings that I'm not the best person to have those discussions, because I don't deal with that on the day-to-day basis. Council should be operating at a more strategic level and a higher level, and letting those that are more knowledgeable in this area, especially FCSS and a lot of the social issues that we face as a community, provide that input in those recommendations back to council. And I agree with Councillor Precision, just having a meeting for the sake of a meeting is not good. And that's how I feel that this has been operating the last couple of years, is that I don't think FCSS as a department's getting the feedback that they need, nor do I believe that we are the experts in this area. I think that this is a lot different than what we had before, in terms of it was community services is a much larger scale with reviewing everything that we were doing in the community services world. This is focused on the FCSS program and the mandates of FCSS. And I also think too, it's more appropriate to have a committee or members of the public deciding or recommending where grants go and town staff, no offense, because that is taxpayer dollars, and having a process in place that looks at that from a community angle. Once again, I think number 3 is the way I would want to go. We have a lot of things that we discussed with our county partners. I don't think we want to spend, you know, our entire meeting talking. We could spend our entire meeting talking about FCSS stuff. Once again, the county has public members that help inform that. They went back to that because it's a more effective model to get that public input and that engagement from your citizens. So that's where I'm at.
Anyone else? Do you have enough information?
I believe so, but it seems a little bit mixed.
Mr. Chair, if I can query Councillor Moore, if you want to state your position on what you think we should do in this situation. What's your perspective is?
I think having community members is really important, because often they know what's going on in their particular community, and they could add some great input to this committee. But you know, in the end, it would be a majority decision by everyone involved. And that's just how I see it. I would side with option 3 myself.
So clear as mud.
Yeah, well, one thing I guess for the chair, if I was to come back with some options to create this board. Would it be possible to get a little guidance on what you're thinking in terms of budget and like how many we would send? Or do you want me to just bring a couple different options?
So, and I think to Councillor Pasicni's point, I think it's really important that we have a structure in place that makes it clear what the responsibilities are. And that board is within the realms of those parameters and what the expectations are. As for paying for members to sit on this board, I do not agree with that. This should be an organization or a committee that is people that want to help build the FCSS program. And the best way to do that is through volunteerism. Certainly, I don't know what you were thinking for a meeting schedule or how often they would meet. I know that I think as a council, we met twice a year, maybe 3 times. Yeah, so if that's the model, I have no problem paying for a dinner or something like that, but we are under a tight budgetary stress right now, so doing this as effectively as we can with limited budget, I think is appropriate. Sending everybody, and this was one of my pet peeves with our community services board. I sat on it for a number of years when I was a councillor, and we would go to West Edmonton Mall for strategic planning sessions, blow thousands of dollars, and it was totally inappropriate. I think that sending 1 or 2 members each and rotating that through, I think that would be good too.
CAO beverage.
Thank you. I just wanted to note that if it is the preferred option to explore, so this is just an exploratory discussion with the county. This is not something that we'd be bringing back in very short order with regards to all of the structures and all the documents, etc. This is an exploratory discussion to see if this is something that our partners our regional partners would be interested in. We've talked about this at a very high level, but just wanted to note that. So.
Now you're clear?
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, actually, I totally agree with that. We'll use it and bring back options because I'm pretty sure everyone in the room has the right idea, just slightly different versions of it. So I guess mandatory, we have to have a board. So if we have several members of council and public, that may work better. And then I think we have to mandatory meet 4 times a year. No, option 3. No, I'm about 2.5. So yes, if you can bring it back for information, I'd probably greatly appreciate it. Unless anyone else has anything different.
So is Councillor Pasicni and Councillor Schnarr going to sit on this board?
Sure. I got nothing.
Since he voted against me, yes, he'd be more than happy to sit on the board with me. So yes, you have 2 volunteers on the board. He enjoys being in the room with me. Okay, thank you for your presentation. That's for the comments you made earlier.
I'm going to pay for that later.
Okay, so we have no information, no sundry. Do we have someone from the media? Yes.
No questions, sorry.
You don't have any questions? And your name is?
Nikki.
Nikki. Okay. Okay, so we have no questions, so we're gonna go into a closed session. Oh, go ahead. You're going to close session. All those in favor? Thank you. For adjournment.
I move to adjourn.
All those in favor?